Okay, so we're looking at Friday, the day after Valentine's Day, 15th. National Buy Cheap Stuffed Animals at CVS Day. This will be for the regular classes. We're going to go through and finish out the rest of our bell work and the talky things from there. Final book report checkpoint is Thursday of next week to get you all the way up to a C, because as of yesterday's checkpoint, you should have a D minus, and then next week's checkpoint gets you to a C minus, and then it's up to you if you want to get higher than that on your own. The narrative speeches begin Tuesday, and then if you have camps that comes with stuff, turn that in. Tie game was Washington, D.C. buildings, because I'm leaving for D.C. with the 8th graders in the morning at like 5 a.m. If you're at home, I have new papery things. I'm going to steal Mayar's. Thank you, Mayar. It's so nice of you. I have papery things you're going to get from me, which is going to make your life a whole lot easier. Then there's this thing, which we're going to talk about. So you're going to make sure you get these things from me, too. It'll make life better for you.
Wait, so are you going to be gone for a while?
Yes, 3 days. I mean, not from school. We're gone for 3 days from school.
Oh, it doesn't.
3 days.
Wait, so you're going to be gone next week?
It works out perfect.
On Monday, the same day you're gone.
Can you please not have Mrs. Becky?
We have
Once
a
again,
3-day weekend.
There's no sub. We have a 3-day weekend.
The weekend.
Wait, are we doing this today?
God.
But I appreciate you attacking this person.
Are we doing this today?
Possibly. We'll see. At the very, we might get like the first word or something like that. Once again, I give you all the answers to it. Let's see, to here. Once again, trying to remind you one last time, we have a 3-day weekend. When you come back from 3-day weekend on Tuesday, then we go straight into speeches. I will send you reminders over the weekend, but there's every chance you're going to ignore them because you know how the kids are and stuff like that. See, to there. You are at 12 points, just so that you are aware. And then we have that. And then making sure you write that stuff out ahead of time. You can get this on my website in case you lost it for some reason. It is going to be there. And I think that's it. Now, let's see. For our things we went through and did before, where did we put chaos?
And God.
And
other stuff.
nice, because what was chaos?
Like a big orb thing.
It tells you right up there.
A big ball of pudding.
The swirling ball of pudding that then formed all the different things and stuff like that. Where did we put Chronos?
Under God's
Places.
God.
In theory, this is where you have the arrows on your little thing because you're pointing them to the correct spot because you are responsible kids. Mr. Brovicast, that's ridiculous. I'm never responsible. I know, I was talking about the other kids. Chronos, who's once again the one above over here where Marvin is, who looks like he's golfing while wearing a little mini skirt because, you know, they were very open and friendly. Hades goes in 2 spots.
Lots of places.
Nice done. And once again, was Hades evil?
No. Yes.
Well,
No. He was depressed.
There you go. And there's a difference between depressed and evil. He was just grumpy and depressed, but he was not evil unless you talk to him. And then what does he call the place where he lives?
Hades.
Hades.
Oh.
What did the humans call the place where he lived?
Underworld.
And that's where Underworld comes in. That becomes the place. We had a nickname for it. And then Titans goes in.
God.
Done. And once again, that's all the posters that you see around here. Those are all the Titans. It just means big person that can crush you and grumpy. Mercurial.
Other stuff.
God.
Other stuff.
Other stuff.
I like how strong and confident you were, even though you were wrong. But if you're going to be wrong, be confident. Yeah, it goes into other stuff. It is connected to the gods. It goes to that dude over there, Hermes, because his Roman name was Mercury, and that's where the word comes from. So that's where we get Mercurial from. And Olympians. Good. Nicely done. That's for the gods. And that would be, remember how many Olympians we have?
12.
Oh, nicely done. 12. This will only have 12 Olympians at any one time. And we get to Atlas. That was in 2 spots also. Nicely done. Because what is the thing?
Like a map.
Nicely done. And how do we know who the god is?
Because he was on top of the world.
There you go. He's holding the thing on top of the world. He's also the weightlifter that's in front of all the different weightlifting gyms and stuff like that, holding up like a plane on his back. Because he was the strongest god to ever exist, even more so than Zeus. He was the Hulk of the Olympians and Titans and stuff like that. Whenever Atlas, he's like, Atlas, smash! And he'd like pick up little ones, and he'd take other gods and smash them back, where he's like, puny god! And like flip them back and forth. It was great. Styx goes in.
Gods
and because starts off as a Titan, and then what does she become?
Turn to the river.
And then she becomes the river, and then that's where she was bad personality, so it becomes poisonous, and so we'll get all those things later. Did we get to scythe with you?
Yes.
I think that was the last one we got to. And scythe is?
Thing.
Not nearly as confident that time. but you're correct. Scythe is a thing. It's the one that is up here again above Marvin. And this thing that's up there in Kronos' hand where he has the long stick with the curvy blade. You can use it either to cut down corn and wheat, or you can use it to go through and kill your parents, or you can use it to take a kid down to 10 B points because instead of doing what he's supposed to, he's trying to work on other homework. It can be used for so many different things at once. Now we'll get to the next ones we have up there. So let's go to our next one, which is one called Gia, and figure out where you put Gia, and then we're going to get a chance to vote on that one. So, gods, places, things, other stuff. Technically, you could probably put her in 2. She is a god, but she is also a place. Gia was known as Mother Earth. So Gia and Mother Earth were the exact same thing. So if you look down and like tap your foot on the ground, that's Mother Earth. But her name was Gia. And so because she was both a god you could talk to and had conversations with, and she also did things like tried to kill her husband, and then along the same lines, she was also going to be an actual place. Then we're going to talk more about her in a moment after we talk about Uranus. And you figure out where you're going to put Uranus. Mr. Brovicast, that's a planet. You're right, but that planet comes from Greek mythology.
Oh, it's God.
So let's go with God, place, thing, other stuff. Uranus, same as Gia. It is also a god and a place. Uranus was Father Sky. And it would not only was a god you could speak to and have conversations with, but was also like the sky that was above you the entire time. Now here's the thing with Gia and Uranus. That is not how you're going to pronounce them, because you are 7th graders. When you pronounce their 2 names, you're going to pronounce them completely differently. Because how are you going to pronounce that name?
Gia.
No.
Gia.
Gaia, because you guys are going to want to giggle. How are you going to pronounce that name?
Uranus.
Correct. Now, here's the best thing about Gaia and Uranus. They were married. They're the very first couple in Greek... Wait a minute. The first couple in Greek mythology was named Gaia and Uranus? And the answer is yes, because the Greeks had a sense of humor. And so, technically their names were Gia and Uranus. And every time I say Gia and Uranus, in your head, you're going to just translate it to giggle, giggle, Gaia, giggle, giggle, Uranus. And we're just going to have to just live to survive, but it's okay. So, I've been used to it by now, but yeah, that's technically the one way to pronounce it, and then the way you're going to pronounce it. Next up, Nike.
The shoes.
Good job, Marvin. Figure out where you're going to put Nike.
I know what. Can I say what it is?
Yeah. Well, is it a god?
I know what
It's
it
a
is.
shoe.
Place?
Oh my gosh.
No.
Thing?
Yes.
Other stuff?
God.
Nike?
Shoe brand.
That's a god.
Our story is all wrong. I thought you meant like
Yeah, you're wrong.
Well, there's actually a reason why the Nike shoes are what they are. Nike, from Greek mythology, was the god of victory. She was what's called a minor god, meaning that she was not one of the major ones that pops up in a lot of stories. She was actually friends with the god over here, Athena. And by the way, with this Athena picture, it's kind of weird. She was not a midget, and that's not a giant horse. It's supposed to be like perspective, where she's far away and the horse is up close and she's pulling the horse backwards. But it comes across looking like a midget fighting a giant horse. But Athena was the god of war. It's one of the couple. She was the god of like 4 or 5 things. One of the big things, she was the god of war. That's wrong, Mr. Brovicast. There's a different god of war. You're right. There's 2 gods of war. The other god of war, for those of you who have played the video game, is the one over here. Ares is the other god of war. The Greeks really liked war. They thought beating people up was great. So they had more than one god of war. You had this god of war, who was all about wussy war. And then you had the god of war over here, which is all about honorable war, which we'll talk about when we get to it. But Athena had a friend by the name of Nike. And Nike is the only Greek god to have wings. Well, one of. There's 2. Technically, Eros, who is Aphrodite's Cupid. Yeah, from Valentine's Day, the fat little chunky baby with the wings. That's actually from Greek mythology. His name was Eros. And he technically has wings, but all he did was like fly around and like hang out with his mom. Beyond that, the only other god to have wings was Nike, N-I-K-E, and she was the god of victory. You would pray to her anytime you wanted to win a battle or something. Or if you were in a sporting event and you wanted to win, if you're like, all right, you and me, we're going to race around the building and see who's the fastest. Like, all right, you're like, Nike, please help me beat this fool because he does not know what he's talking about. You're like, and you take off praying, like, thank you, Nike. And you would pray to Nike, god of victory. Fast forward thousands of years to the 1970s. 1970s, shoe company comes out. And they're like, hey, we're going to do this new shoe, which is going to make you all super fast when you wear it. And it's going to be just for people who play sports. And if you wear our shoes, all you're going to do is win. That's all we do. So they decide to name their company after the god of victory. And that shoe company is?
Nike.
But Mr. Broviak, where's their symbol come from? That symbol on Nike, that little thing on that was called the swoosh. The reason it's called a swoosh is because Nike, only God with wings, that swoosh is supposed to be the sign of a wing sweeping you forward on the side of the shoe. So that is supposed to be the symbol of a wing cutting through the air. And so that was their idea of putting little wings on the side of your shoes to guide you forward. And that's why Nike has the name it does, and where the swoosh comes from, it's a wing going through the air. Yay, learning. So there's Nike.
I'll never learn how to do these things.
Next up, Trident. Figure out,
Mr. Robiak, that's gum.
you're right, it is gum, but that's not what it was in Greek mythology. So go with God, place, thing, other stuff. Good job. Trident is a thing. It's a three-pronged pokey stick. Over here above where Gamboa is, we have Poseidon, and then hiccup, the thing in his hand right there, Trident. See over here, once again, above Marvin. That is Poseidon, three-pronged pokey stick. Over here, Poseidon, three-pronged pokey stick.
You have one. Was he like the king of the ocean or something?
I have a one-pronged pokey stick.
What, so that Aquaman's dad?
I have a unident. A unident, one-pronged pokey stick. If I could poke you 3 times with it, it'd be a trident. If you can remember, tri meaning 3, like tricycle. And if I were to poke you, it'd make 3 dents in you. And so it's called a trident because it makes 3 dents whenever you poke a person. And so he used it to control water. He'd also use it to whenever he hung out with the other gods. And they would have cookouts. You could put 3 marshmallows on it at one time and put it over the fire. And he'd make all kinds of friends and stuff like that. And so it was the trident for making 3 dents and things. Sacrifices. Let's go with, where are you going to put? Let's go with gods, places, things, other stuff. Yeah, well done. It would be one of the things we're going to talk about with Greek mythology because it pops up. They do sacrifices. They did not do human sacrifices. The whole like stabbing a person and ripping out their heart, like thumpy, 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 thump. That was not Greek mythology. That was down more like in South America with like Aztecs and Mayans. The Greeks, you had to sacrifice, but you would only sacrifice food. You had to sacrifice food to the gods all the time. So you'd have to like take like your bowl of honeycomb and be like, oh great Zeus, please make me have a good day. Here's some honeycomb. And you throw like honeycomb outside. And that was how you sacrificed to the gods. So for them, it was always food you gave up, but not like a person.
They thought
You can't be like Malachi and like stab him, like rip out his heart and be like, please take Malachi's heart. Like, no, we don't want his heart. Like, oh, sorry, Malachi. Put it back in there. But it wasn't always very successful. Cyclops. So figure out where we're going to put Cyclops. All right. Gods, places,
I think this is true.
things, other stuff. I don't do trick questions. That's ridiculous. Cyclops technically could either be put in gods or other stuff, depending on how you want to classify them. The Cyclops were gods. They were actually older than all of the Titans. There were 3 of them that originally existed. What does the Cyclops look like?
One eye.
One giant eyeball right in the middle of the head. And turned out there's 3 of them, and they were gigantic. They were also incredibly ugly, but we'll get to that whole thing. By the way, real quick learning lesson to help you out. Cyclops does not mean one-eyed, because you already know if we take one, the OPS, for those of you who have ever gone to an optometrist, do you know what an optometrist is? Eye doctor. So OPS just means eye. CYCL, well, you ever been on a bicycle?
Yeah.
What does the CYCL mean in bicycle? No, that's what the bi means. 2, because what is a tricycle? So CYCL just means wheel. So what does Cyclops mean?
Wheel.
Nicely done. Mr. Broviak, that's just weird. Well, the way the Greeks believed, it looked like someone took a giant wheel from a car, walked up to them and just went whack in the middle of their head and were like, I'm done, and then walked away. So they were just called the giant wheel-eyed ones because it looked like you just put a giant wheel in the middle of their head. And like it was always like stuck right there in the center and like, looks good to me. So they're actually called wheel-eyes. Otherwise, you'd be called a uniops, which could technically, you guys are all called biops, because technically you have 2 eyes. And so like that.
Wait, that was called biopsy?
Bi, different, good guess. Because there's 2 different definitions for bi. One means 2.
Is it possible
For those of you who
them
do
to
science, you know
double
what
die?
bisect means?
Like, when they're born, not just cut off.
Ooh, you know what dissecting means?
Cut open.
To cut open. So die means to in half, and then sect means to cut. Bisect means to cut into 2 halves. So if I were to bisect Taylor, I'd take a sword and be like, and she split into 2 halves. So bi means either to split in half or it means 2. So biops would be, so a biopsy is when they cut into you have a tumor and they cut it in half to see what makes it work. So it would be a different kind of biopsy. Sorry, didn't mean to teach. It was like school for a second. Let's go back to ignoring those things. Olympus. So Olympus we have gods, places, things, other stuff. Good job. It's a place. We talked about the Olympians who are over there, and now we have Olympus. If you lived on Olympus, what were you called? Look at you guys learning on your own already. Ooh, how many people could live on Olympus? Goodness gracious, you guys keep paying attention to make my job easy. And so Olympus was just the mountain. There was a palace on top. And eventually we're going to talk about why there was a palace, because it was created for a reason. There's actually a reason why there's 12 thrones and stuff like that. We'll get to it, but yeah. Olympus was just a really tall mountain that they went and lived on. 3 left, then we'll take your questions. Prometheus. Gods, places, things, other stuff. Prometheus was a god. He was one of the titans who gets in a fight with...
But that's a movie.
It is. We're going to talk about why it was a movie too. If you know the movie Prometheus, once you know Greek mythology, that movie makes a lot more sense because the things that happen in that movie connects to these things that happen in Greek mythology. And so there's one of those things where it's not a random reason why that movie's called Prometheus. It connects all the way back to this guy. Yes.
Are we gonna watch
It's basically the story of aliens.
The problem with watching stuff like Percy Jackson is most of it is wrong as far as Greek mythology. So a lot of it reading or watching Percy Jackson is having you guys point out what's wrong with it. As opposed to it's a fun movie. It's just not actually following a lot of Greek mythology.
The book is really weird. I don't recommend it.
I like it. It's just the fact that you have to as long as you know actual Greek mythology, you know why it's separating and going in different directions. Iris. With that one we have, so we put that one. God, place, thing, other stuff. Iris goes in 2. It is both a thing and a god. For those of you who know what the thing is, what is an iris? Which part of your eyeball?
The colored part.
It is the colored part of your eyeball. And because there was also a Greek god, Iris. And Iris was the god of rainbows. And being the god of rainbows, when they named your body parts, they named that colored part of your eye after the god of rainbows. Just like there was a god named Pointus. And Pointus was named after the god of charging kids points for putting away their notebooks while the teacher was still going over things. Pointus, I wasn't yelling at you yet. There were other kids for me to yell at. He's so subtle. And our last one before we get to our next thing we'll get to is Clotho. And we have gods, places, things, other stuff. It's a person. Clotho was a god. She was actually a titan before all the normal titans existed. Clotho had 2 sisters, Clotho, and then there was Lachesis and Atropos. Ooh. They were the 3 fates. If you've seen either Percy Jackson or the Hercules one, they're the 3 sisters who share an eyeball. I think in Percy Jackson they were like taxi drivers.
Yeah.
And then in the Hercules movie, they're trying to cut a string to kill him and stuff like that. Shockingly enough, not all of that is actually based on Greek mythology. But yes, there were the 3 sisters, and they controlled how long you would live, and there was a string that was connected to how long you would live and stuff like that. So those are the different things that go into it. Now, we're done with the bell work, and you could then push that away without me having to bring Pointus upon you. Here's where the blue and white sheet come in. What was the first thing you should do with the blue and white sheet? Because one, definitely on the blue sheet, because you're going to turn that in the last day of Greek mythology. So you're going to have to not lose this for like 5 weeks, which for many of you is 4.5 weeks longer than you normally try and not lose a thing. which is going to be kind of scary for you. So you're going to try and keep it somewhere safe-ish. If you do, I can try to get it back to you. We're going to be using these as the next time we get a chance to go through and do stuff. Unfortunately, that won't be until next Friday. Next Friday is our next day we get a chance to come back to Greek mythology. The good news is after that we get into like non-stop Greek mythology. Because we have 2 more days of speeches, 1 more day of book reporting, and then Greek mythology, and then much more Greek mythology, then stuff from there.
What about the secret word speech or something?
If we get a chance to get back to them, fingers crossed, off and on. So you guys, we probably will, being first period. My other classes probably won't, because we're going to have a 3rd day of narrative speeches. And my guess is that you guys will get through your narrative speeches much more quickly than my other classes. So we'll get a chance to do those secret word speeches with you guys, and my other classes will just have to suffer.